Welcome everyone to the Housing Element Annual Progress Report webinar. We'll get started shortly. We're just allowing a few more people to join. All right, thank you everyone for joining. Again, we are just waiting a few more moments to allow our interpreters to join. Thank you very much for your patience.
Muchas gracias a todos por su paciencia. Estaremos dando inicio brevemente. All right, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight as we present to you the Housing Element Annual Progress Report during tonight's webinar. In order to best take advantage of tonight's meeting, I encourage all participants to join their preferred language channel by selecting the interpretation globe at the bottom of their screen. By selecting your preferred language, you're actually able to hear simultaneously the translation of other participants who may speak a different language than you. So tonight we will be offering American Sign Language, Spanish, Hmong, and Punjabi for participants. Currently, I do have my Spanish and Hmong interpreter on the line.
So I would like to invite them to please relay the participation instructions in their target language. So for the Spanish interpreter.
Muy buenas tardes, bienvenidos a la Junta. Para accesar la opción de interpretación, por favor seleccionar el icono que aparece un mundo. Luego seleccionará español y silenciará el audio original. Le invitamos a hacer preguntas y comentarios en su lenguaje de preferencia. Si está usando la aplicación de Zoom por teléfono, por favor de seleccionar los 3 puntos después del lenguaje de interpretación, que quiere decir interpretación del lenguaje. Después, español. Y por último, va a silenciar el audio original. Muchas gracias.
Wonderful, thank you very much. And the Hmong interpreter?
nhớ trong xe tại tòa này sẽ là ở đây cô là còn bay là trong the housing element mà nó vấn đề bay ở bên đó nó do thì này lên từ là còn bay này họ sẽ còn mua lô anh kia nó sau lô mong là thọ này nhẹ nè họ channel ở sai họ lô mong mua lúc lôm nhớ cho họ cá để này để screen thọ này nhẹ nè họ đã nó ta này nó u chạy lô mong cho lô là nó hay lô anh kia để nó do hai tên này chỉ bao hai lô ăn kỳ và chỉ to hơn đó mà nó phải mua cho nên xài lô là món đồ mẹ thế bây giờ mình nhớ trong là nó chạy cho nên tụi nó phải xài cái này sẽ ra cái cho họ nó đó ở trong đó.
Wonderful, thank you. And I do not see my Punjabi interpreter in my panelists list. Just to verify, are you in my attendees list? And you may signify that by either raising your hand or dialing *9. Harjeet, thank you. Give me one moment. Let me promote you. And let me make you co-host. A little technical end. Give me one just quick moment. And Harjeet, as our Punjabi interpreter, please provide that statement in your target language.
ਸਤਿ ਸ਼੍ਰੀ ਅਕਾਲ ਜੀ ਅੱਜ ਅਸੀਂ ਹਾਊਸਿੰਗ ਐਲੀਮੈਂਟ ਤੇ ਆਪਣੀ ਐਨੂਅਲ ਰਿਪੋਰਟ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ 2020 ਦੀ ਅਸੀਂ ਅੱਜ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਕਰਨੀ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ ਤੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਦਾ ਸਵਾਗਤ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਤੇ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਅਸੀਂ ਇਸ ਮੀਟਿੰਗ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਬਹੁਤ ਵਧੀਆ ਅਸੀਂ ਜਾਣਕਾਰੀ ਦੇਵਾਂਗੇ ਸ਼ੁਕਰੀਆ
Wonderful, thank you very much. All right. So the interpretation lines are now active, and I'll give everyone a moment to join their respective channels. And for the benefit of the public, this meeting is being recorded. We are also broadcasting on CMAC3 government channel, cmac.tv/gov, Comcast Xfinity channel 96, AT&T Uverse channel 99, and the City of Fresno Facebook Live. So your participation in tonight's meeting is considered consent to be recorded. Everyone will remain muted during the presentation, and public comments will be taken after our speakers. So to provide verbal comment, feel free to either raise your hand by selecting the raise hand button on your screen or dial *9 from your phone. We also have available the Q&A option at the bottom of your screen, as well as the chat for those who would like to type in their comments to the panel. So again, thank you very much for joining. At this time, I'd like to hand it off to Sophia Pagalatas, Planning Manager of the Planning and Development Department.
Thank you very much, Summer. And I just want to give a shout out to Summer Cecil. She is our logistics expert, our management analyst, and she really helps keep the meeting running smoothly. So thank you, Summer. We will be counting on you if we have any questions. So welcome all again tonight to our Housing Element Annual Progress Report workshop. Tonight's agenda will consist of some introductions, and then we'll dig into the report, and we'll hear from some partners this evening, Self-Help Enterprises and Fresno Housing Authority. Then we'll talk about next step, and we'll hear from you. So we're going to kick it off with our introductions. I want you to know who is here on the panel this evening. We have several colleagues from the Fresno Planning and Development Department here this evening. We have Mike Sanchez, who is our Assistant Director. We have, of course, Summer Cecil that I mentioned at the controls. We have Karen Jenks, who is in our housing division, and H. Spies of Strategic Initiatives. We will also be joined by Casey Lauderdale in the planning department a little bit later this evening. Also, we have some housing partners, special guests this evening, Kelly Furtado, Assistant Director at Fresno Housing, and Miguel Arambula with Self-Help Enterprises. So you know a little bit more about us. We'd like to know a little bit more about you. So we are going to be doing a few polling questions, and we'll kick it off this evening with this one. We'd like to know who is here in our workshop. You can please select the option that best fits you. Okay, so are those results the final ones, Summer?
These are our results. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so we can see we have a fairly equal distribution of housing advocates, housing developers, and government officials or staff, as well as some resident representation. So thank you. That helps us know who's in the room. The second question we have is how you heard about the workshop. So if you could let us know that, that would help us. Okay, I'm seeing it looks like it's thinking.
Sorry, it seemed there was a little glitch. One moment.
That's all right. Looks like email was our 86% by email. So it sounds like that was the main way that people heard about it. Thank you for that. And we will dive into our workshop at this point. So we're going to do a little refresher about what a housing element is, since this is the annual report of the housing element. And it's basically the city's housing plan. It requires certification by the state agency, Housing and Community Development. It's the only part of our general plan that actually requires that. The housing element is on an 8-year cycle, and our current housing element was updated in 2015, and it will be updated again in 2023. The housing element is available on our website at fresno.gov/housing element. The main purpose of the housing element is to promote the production of safe, decent, and affordable housing for all community residents. And the housing element tries to do that with a number of objectives and programs that support creating an environment that is very favorable to development of various housing types at various price points. The city is not a developer of housing by trade, but it does try to create favorable conditions. And we'll talk about how it does that when we get into the annual report. So this is what the annual report looks like for this year. It is also available on the city's website. It is put together on forms that are all prescribed by the state of California. And there's a lot of detail in it, and we won't have time to go into all of the detail this evening, but our goal is to give you the high points. Also, we have created what we call Housing Element Annual Report Highlights Brochures. And we've created these in English, Spanish, Hmong, and Punjabi. And they give you just the highlights in infographic form about the activities that occurred in 2020 with our housing element. So those are also available on the website. And the bulk of our discussion tonight about the housing element and the annual report is going to be structured around the 5 main objectives in the housing element, which are right here. We have land for housing is objective 1. Objective 2 is affordable housing. The removal of government constraints is the 3rd objective. The 4th is conserving existing housing, and the 5th is equal housing opportunity. The housing element contains 28 different programs that fall all within these 5 objectives. And this evening, we're going to report on progress that has been made in some of those programs. And you might want to just make a mental note of these objectives, because we're going to have a polling question afterwards about what your top priority out of these objectives would be. So the first objective is adequate sites to accommodate a range of housing types and affordability levels. I like to call this program Land for Housing. It's a program that essentially requires the city to document that it has enough vacant land to accommodate housing demand for the cycle, the 8-year cycle of the housing element. We start using interesting terms when we talk about this. One of the more common ones is the RHNA, the Regional Housing Needs Allocation. And that is the process by which this housing demand gets determined. It's basically based on population projections and other data that are then handed to counties and cities to estimate future housing demand. The RHNA is also divided up by affordability levels. So Fresno's RHNA for the 2015 through 2023 housing element looks like this. It is required to have 23,565 housing units of capacity in vacant land. So again, this isn't a construction goal, but it is a planning goal of adequate sites. The city also must have this land available in different affordability levels, as you see here. And the state equates the affordability levels to different densities. So for example, for the land that would be available for the development of housing that would be affordable to extremely and very low income households, that land needs to be zoned at 30 units to the acre or higher. That's how these different categories work. So if we look at the planning goals, which is the RHNA, the state also likes to see how our actual construction is comparing with the RHNA. So you see in the left-hand column, the blue column, here are the numbers that we just looked at, the 23,565 dwelling units worth of land capacity. And we've mapped here how many dwelling units have actually been constructed. These are actually building permits issued for housing during this housing element period. And what you can see here are the first 4 years. Here's 2020, and zooming in on 2020, this chart would tell us that 2,252 building permits were issued for residential housing units during 2020, of which 68 of those were for extremely and very low income households. So how we determine the affordability and if the dwelling unit is affordable to low income households is by, the rules are very strict about this. They must be deed restricted and they must have a certain affordability level that guarantees that affordability level over a period of time. So if we look at the totals here, what this chart is telling us is that since 2015, when this housing element was adopted, 11,630 residential building permits have been issued, and there's still 11,935 dwelling units worth of housing capacity left in the RENA. So the city has determined that adequate sites have been maintained. The city continues to have a surplus capacity in all income categories for land supply. But now we move to, again, just a little closer look at housing production. The state wants to make sure that our process is working properly, and our process kind of looks like a funnel. So a housing unit first requires a planning entitlement application, and then that application needs to be completed, and then a building permit is issued, and then the unit is constructed. So zooming in on just what happened in 2020, there were 2,645 residential housing applications submitted. And there were 1,531 completed. Here are building permits issued. And then finally, there were 1,224 residential housing units constructed, of which 85 were affordable to extremely and very low income households. So that's kind of all the numbers that we're going to be crunching for this evening. This is a map showing where those residential units were constructed over the last year. And that takes us to objective 2, which is assisting in the development of housing to meet the needs of extremely low, very low, low and moderate income households. This is a really important role that the city plays. One of the things it does to help facilitate affordable housing is grant density bonuses, which are allowing more housing units than would otherwise be allowed by the zoning if the development includes affordable housing. So this last year, one density bonus was granted for an 11-unit residential development near Peach and Butler. Also, the city has funding that it uses in a variety of ways to increase housing opportunity and invest in neighborhoods and construct affordable housing. The total funding that it receives on an annual basis right now is about 15 million. About half of that, 7.2 million, are community development block grant funds. Another 3.4 million are home funds, and then a new source of funding that has recently been attained is the permanent local housing allocation for another 3.4 million. Also, in 2020, there were a couple of one-time new funding sources that came into the picture. One was the local early action planning grant for $750,000 that can be used for planning activities. And among the things that the city is working on with these funds are the establishment of an affordable housing trust fund and standard plans for accessory dwelling units to make it easier to construct a second dwelling unit on your property. Also, the city received one-time CARES Act funds over the 2020 calendar year. Another way that the city facilitates affordable housing is through partnerships. And I'm sure you recognize some familiar names here. You will be hearing from them, some of them, Self-Help and Fresno Housing, later this evening. One of the accomplishments of 2020 was Annadale Commons that was constructed by Self-Help Enterprises and their resident participants. There were 40, these are 40 affordable senior housing units in Southwest Fresno. Also, 135 multifamily and senior affordable units were constructed on Kings Canyon Avenue. Las Palmas de Sal Gonzalez apartments were completed during 2020. And now I am going to turn it over to H. Spies, who is going to tell us about special needs and emergency shelter progress over 2020. Hello, H, welcome.
Hi, Sophia. Thank you. Hi, everybody. Hi, I'm H. Spies. I'm Director of Housing and Homeless Initiatives for the City of Fresno. Through the Dyer administration, I was asked to coordinate our efforts internally and connecting with partners across the community, addressing homelessness and affordable housing, two of our hugest priorities. Hugest is not a word, is it? But definitely the priorities that affect quality of life, perhaps more than anything else, at least in terms of the response that we get from the public, are their projects and challenges that require a community-wide response, not just the city. And to point that out, we see that between 2019 on these slides and 2020, we actually had about a 69% increase in the number of folks that were homeless. And we fortunately were able to shelter more people than ever before, but the need is outstripping our ability to respond, even with the incredible number of resources that have been sent our way. Next slide, please. Our total shelter beds in the city of Fresno today are about 1,454, and I say about because some of those beds you can see here, actually a huge number of those beds were funded through our homeless emergency rooms, funded through the COVID-19 homeless response. And so those are temporary, and those beds are actually scheduled to be moved out of commission by the end of June. Homeless emergency rooms are about 365, and then we had the opportunity to add, through the assistance from the state of California, some major beds, motel rooms. We, in partnership with the Housing Authority purchased, and we assist in providing operating funds for 4 motels that are first being acquired, then were repaired within 60 days. They were acquired and repaired and turned into COVID shelters. They will later be completely renovated and be added to our inventory of affordable housing. So a huge move there with Project Home Key. Next slide, please. The challenge is that the problem of homelessness is growing. One of the things that we can be proud of, but for about a second, is that between 2011 and 2017, we had the highest rates of reduction in homelessness of any city on the West Coast of the United States. We had about a 59% reduction in homelessness. But like I said, we can be proud of that for about a second because homelessness is on the rise, and it's been on the rise since 2017. And you can see it rising here. And we anticipate that it's risen more, even though we couldn't do a point in time count due to COVID this year. We anticipate that it is rising significantly. And we estimate that there's somewhere between 4,500 and 5,000 folks that are homeless in the city of Fresno. And what we're anticipating is a rise as a result of the end of the eviction moratorium, which ends June 30th. So we are anticipating even greater impact on some of our folks in our community, perhaps dropping off the edge into homelessness. Next slide, please. Next slide. So what are we getting for our money? We've had about $157 million invested through various institutions, including the city of Fresno, over the last couple of years. And about $57 million of that has come to the city itself. And it's worth asking the question, what have we received? What have we delivered? What kind of outcomes have resulted from that investment? And keep in mind that some of those are coming in big chunks. So for instance, 24 million came just to purchase those 4 hotels that I mentioned earlier. Another 35 million has come just for rental housing assistance to assist people who were impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. But be that as may, these are some of the results. 4,411 people assisted with some type of service for unsheltered persons. About 473 beds added to the system. A little over 2,000 people assisted with overnight shelter, triage, or bridge housing. About 1,200 folks that have exited the system, 648 to permanent housing. So even during a time of COVID, that's pretty good in terms of housing exits. We've had about, because of the COVID-19 homeless response, we've had about 1,500 that have been assisted and 432 additional emergency beds added and an average of 394 occupied. Next slide, please.
H, this is your last slide.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Let me just one other thing. Thank you.
Yes.
One other thing, and that is, you may have heard of Project Off-Ramp. We were able to synchronize the housing of folks through our Project Home Key with the relocation of folks off of our most dangerous real estate in Fresno. During about a week and a half period of time, we actually had 3 traffic fatalities of homeless people living on our highways. And so we put an emphasis on that, and we've been able to relocate close to 250 folks off of the highways and into our Home Key motels. We're very grateful for that. Thank you, Sophia.
You bet. Thank you, H. Summer, I understand we have a couple of questions that have come in.
Yes, just really briefly, related to a slide that you had, Sophia, on the RENA versus building permit. Jessica Burzak asked, do those numbers include Home Key? It seems not, is what she said.
Correct. Yeah, she is correct. Those numbers do not include Home Key.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay. So moving along, sorry, my slides are a little sluggish tonight. We are still in Objective 2, which is assisting in development of housing to meet the needs of low-income households. And one of the ways that we can do that is by conserving mobile homes. So the city and self-help enterprises have partnered on a CalHome grant application for a program to rehabilitate 21 mobile homes. We don't know if we were awarded the funds yet, but our fingers are crossed that we did. Also, the city supports getting the word out for the Housing Authority's Housing Choice Voucher Program. And Kelly Furtado is going to talk to you a little bit more about that. That moves us into Objective 3, which is removal of governmental constraints to housing. So one of the programs that really has yielded some nice results is the Downtown Development Streamlining Program, I would call it. The program seeks to streamline housing in downtown, and in 2016, the zoning code was modified so that any housing project that was consistent with the housing element that was proposed in downtown could receive, expedited and streamlined processing. So as a result of that, over 100 units have been either entitled or permitted in 2020. To counterbalance that, the housing element also contains a downtown displacement program, and that's really aimed at preventing displacement in the downtown area. An anti-displacement task force was created in 2018 to really help inform city staff and gather community input about displacement. And in 2020, that task force met twice during the year. Also informing the task force is the Thrivance Group, which is a a consultant group that is very experienced with displacement, and they were hired to study and make policy recommendations based on community input. And even though we were extremely limited with the pandemic and social distancing, the Thrivance group still managed to do a great job contacting residents in the Southwest Fresno and downtown areas about displacement. So we are anxiously awaiting the results of their work. A report called Here to Stay will be released soon and made available for public input. So if that's something you're interested in, you can check on our Housing Element website and look at it yourself. Also, the city expedites processing for projects, as I mentioned earlier, not just in the downtown, but also citywide. It offers fee reductions and fee waivers for certain projects that qualify, as well as expedited processing in downtown. The city also monitors development on small and large lots, that is lots that are smaller than 1 acre or larger than 10 acres, because those are considered to be lot sizes that are very challenging to develop affordable housing on. So what we found this year is that we had several sites that were under 1 acre, over 90 sites, and nearly 20 affordable housing units were developed on those sites, whereas we had about 20 sites of 10 acres or over that are being developed for market rate housing. We don't know of any affordable housing that's being developed on those. Our fourth objective is to conserve existing housing stock. And one of the ways that the city does that is to invest in infrastructure in the city's older neighborhoods. And this is a quick review of the investments that were made in 2020. This is from our highlights brochure. The city also completes home rehabilitations for low and moderate income homeowners. 57 were completed in the last 2 years, which meets the housing element goal of 23 rehabilitations per year. The last objective is equal housing opportunity, and the city has 3 programs that fall into that category. The first one, Fair Housing Services, is described here. The city allocates funding to the Fair Housing Council of Central California to conduct extensive outreach and education on fair housing. That agency fields housing discrimination complaints and cases of new rental housing discrimination. In addition, the analysis of impediments to fair housing choice, which is an analysis that the city is required to do, was adopted by the council in May of 2020. The next program I'd really like to highlight with regard to equal housing opportunity is Program 27, Equitable Communities. This program seeks to balance the city of Fresno's housing by incentivizing and promoting infrastructure in its older neighborhoods and also more affordable housing in its high opportunity neighborhoods. High opportunity neighborhoods being those with average incomes of over 80% of the area median income and high performing schools. So over the reporting period, these are the neighborhoods that received neighborhood investments. And also on the high opportunity area side, 7.1 million in community development block grant and home funds were allocated to increase affordable housing development in high opportunity areas. There are other initiatives that are also working towards equity. The Regional Drive Initiative includes 18 initiatives calling for very large investment. Some of you may have heard of Transform Fresno, which is a $66 million investment from the state of California that leveraged more than twice that amount in other sources to invest in over 20 projects in Southwest Fresno, Chinatown, and downtown. And then finally, another task of the Equitable Communities Program was to do a general plan implementation analysis and to convene a task force for that. So over the program year, a general plan implementation task force was called together. They met 13 times and they did review and analyze the progress towards implementation of the city's general plan. And information on that is available on the city's website as well. So that brings us back to our housing element programs and these 5 objectives. And Summer, it's time for another poll. What I would like to know from our participants this evening is if you had to select one of these objectives as your most important, either for you or for the community, which one would it be? Okay. Looks like affordable housing, 67%, with a second coming in with removal of government constraints. Thank you for participating in that. There it is. Now I'd like to introduce 2 of our partners who have done some amazing housing work in the year 2020, and I'll call Miguel Arambula, project manager from Self-Help Enterprises.
All right, thank you, Sophia.
Yes.
Sharing my screen here. Everybody see that okay? All right. Yeah, so my name is Miguel Arambula. I'm a project manager at Self-Help Enterprises. We're an affordable housing developer in the San Joaquin Valley. We operate in an 8-county region. And here to tell you about some of the projects we completed here in partnership with the city of Fresno. The first one here is Annadale Commons. It's located at 1515 East Annadale. It is senior housing. It is our first project that was dedicated to seniors. Rents range from about $300 to $800 depending on people's income. And yeah, it had 40 units. It is fully leased up at the moment, but if people are interested, they can call the number on the screen there, 559-888-2470 to get on the list and the wait list. And we did receive funding from the city of Fresno, I think some home dollars and some resources there. So let me go to the next slide. This one's a nice one. It's an infill single family home in the historic Lowell neighborhood. We just finished our grading and are about to start pouring foundation and getting under construction here. It'll be 4 beds, 2 baths, about 1,400 square feet. Hope to be done by the end of the year. And it will be reserved for somebody under 80% of the area median income. So if you are interested in that or have a network that you think might be interested, that's the main line for our office, 559-651-1000, and can get on the list there. We do have a rehab program that we do in partnership with the city of Fresno, which I think comes from the CDBG dollars in part. And so we completed 20 homes this year, and we've got 16 in the process. If people are interested, We do all kinds of repairs, but we really focus on things related to health and safety. So roof repairs, HVAC, mold, lead-based paint, that kind of stuff. There's a number on the screen. If you are interested or know somebody who is, they can give a call. And we do have home ownership opportunities. That's how we started. That's where our name comes from, self-help. Housing is an idea where people get together. We do it in about groups of 10, and they put in sweat equity, which means that they commit to putting in about 40 hours a week to build the house over a period of 9 months. And that reduces the cost, and it also helps get them in at a low mortgage. And so we have a subdivision that we're finishing the final map on and hope to break ground in June of this year. And it's directly next to Annadale Commons and also near our transformative climate communities transportation improvements on Annadale. So if anybody's interested, they can call that number there. We've got 16 more single family homes we plan to do on Walnut and Florence. Homes are kind of designed for families, 3 and 4 bedrooms, about 1,400 square feet. And just want to emphasize, some people think that they won't qualify or that kind of thing, and just encourage everybody, we do have a gateway home ownership prep. And if you're not ready now, they can talk to you about what steps people need to do to get ready. So if people generally have questions, that's our main line. We're happy to help and meet people. My boss is Betsy McGovern Garcia. If you have questions about some of our projects or that kind of stuff, and that's me there, my phone number and email. And that's all I got, Sophia.
Thank you so much, Miguel. Now it looks like, well, let me pull up my slides.
Sophia, while you're doing that, I do have a question from the audience.
Great.
Awesome. So maybe this is a good question for H. Alex Bollinger from FUSD asks, is there a way we can get the child count in the 4 repurposed hotels? Several of the locations are near impacted schools, and we need to be able to support student and classroom space. And then he also has a second question after you answer that one, H. H, are you online?
Yep, I'm here.
Awesome, thank
Okay.
you.
Was that Alex?
Yes, correct.
If Alex could send me an email at h.spies@fresno.gov, and I'll put that in the chat. That would be, I will get that information for him, because that's important information, and we can get that pretty easily through our folks who are running our motels on Motel Drive. So Alex, there's my email in the chat. Just send that request to me and we'll get those numbers.
Awesome, thank you so much, H. He also asks, also are we not getting developer fees for these new facilities, which take away bond projects already planned? Will there be relief from the city of Fresno or the state to help provide portable classrooms?
I don't quite understand the bond question. I don't think that these are special funds. These projects are specially funded through the state. The state took CARES Act dollars, and then in a very creative move that helped us leverage these very short-term dollars for long-term impact on our homeless service delivery system, crafted Project Home Key. But what was the second part of that question?
Will there be relief from the city of Fresno or the state to help provide portable classrooms?
I know there won't be any from the city of Fresno, but you know, we can, but I would, in that same email, what I'd love you to do is to make a case for why you will need more classroom space, and the city would be glad to partner with you in advocating for additional resources to house students. If I understand your question, Alex, you're really asking, in light of the fact that there are a whole bunch of kids, and there's basically Step Up 99, the old Motel 99 is the place where the children are. And we can find out how many kids exactly. You probably have worked with Live Again Fresno with Richard Burrell. He'd also be another great contact. But if what you're saying is are we going to be impacting the number of students at Adams Elementary School? If we discover that that is a huge impact and needs additional classroom space, we would be glad to partner with you in making sure that we secure those resources from the state or whoever we can get them from.
Awesome. Thank you very much, H.
Yep.
And Sophia, it looks like Kelly has fixed her technical issues. We can move along.
Wonderful. Then I will turn it over to Kelly Furtado of Fresno Housing.
Great. Thank you all. I'm going to be attempting to share my screen, so just bear with me because I've been having some great technical difficulties this evening. But as I come online, I plan on just doing a pretty quick overview, and let's see. You all should see me now. Okay, so I'm going to just jump through. And again, we're going to be going through a lot of slides here tonight, but I am going to do my very best to keep it moving pretty quickly for you. So at Fresno Housing, we have about 240 different staff members, and going to probably be oversimplifying a bit, but we are an executive office, a real estate development department, and our housing programs. And then we have our core administrative and business services. So the Fresno Housing team is pretty mission driven, and very proud that a lot of our staff members are also folks that have experience in housing programs like the ones that we deliver today. We're governed by 2 different board of commissioners with 14 members. We actually have a meeting tonight, so if you all don't mind, I will probably jump off soon and see if I can catch the end of my own board meeting. But we have 4 residents that are also part of our board of commissioners. And we've been doing this work for around 80 years now. And we're what HUD considers to be a high-performing public housing agency. So in the interest of time, again, I'm going to be oversimplifying, but in a nutshell, our work is providing affordable housing to folks that have low income. So the numbers change daily, but about 50,000 customers of what we serve, we consider our customers residents, and this is throughout Fresno County. And we offer a variety of services related to affordable housing in 2 distinct ways. The first way that we provide these housing opportunities is what Sophia mentioned I'd talk a little bit more about tonight, which is our Housing Choice Voucher Program. Some may be much more familiar with, it was formerly called the Section 8 program. And this is one of those instances where it deserves a really complex, long description. But in a nutshell, our HCV program is basically a federally funded program that provides all or a portion of rental assistance to property owners. And it's to be used by voucher holders. So those are people that have qualified and are low income individuals or families. These voucher holders, like I'd mentioned, they rent from the private market. They rent from landlords and property owners, and they often pay a portion of their rent. And the HCV program is something that is a very reliable source of income, not only for the voucher holders, but also for our community's landlords. And the second way that we really provide those housing opportunities
is through what I call the housing management work. So our agency owns and or manages about 80 properties throughout Fresno County. And this portfolio of properties that we own and manage, it represents about 4,400 units. So some of these units are older, but about half have been developed since 2010, when Fresno Housing jumped right into the business of affordable housing and real estate development. So our team has some pretty comprehensive development and financial expertise, and they work with a variety of federal funders, which many of you on this call know that requires a ton of regulations and rule following. But one of the things that we're dedicated to at Fresno Housing is ensuring that these safe living conditions are also attractive in the communities. So to that point, I'm just going to flip through a couple of slides that talk about how much design matters when you're doing affordable housing. Some of our properties often include community areas and green space. Our properties that are focused on families are going to have things like play structures. You won't necessarily see those at our veteran or our senior properties, but many of our family properties will have nice play areas. You'll see some community spaces. Unfortunately, these are not utilized as much, clearly during a pandemic, but the community rooms will feature kitchen areas and computer labs, things of that nature that are really a benefit to our residents. And the gathering spaces are really important for services as well. So we have what we call a resident empowerment team that works with some of our amazing community-based organizations and partners that work throughout the year, providing workshops and other kinds of services. For example, we've just recently piloted a workforce development program with Lanisha Senegal with the Hope Builds team. But we are constantly doing food programs, home ownership workshops, painting programs, after school, tutoring, mentoring, all kinds of things like that. And our new website features a new calendar of events. So our residents and the community can touch base there on our website and see all the amazing things that we're offering for residents. Like many, we'll see a lot of these virtual opportunities probably continuing into the future because they're so much more accessible. Just this slide was really to make a point to say that it goes without saying that our agency is committed to both high quality and affordability. You know, one does not have to be done at the expense of another. And sustainability is also really important. You know, that can include a lot of environmental things, solar panels, but for long-term maintenance and care of our properties, we put a lot of emphasis on sustainability features. And the picture that you see here is actually something that Fresno Housing just won an award on. It's near the VA hospital and homes formerly homeless veterans. It's just a great property. So since this is a 2020 report on the housing element, I just wanted to go through a couple of highlights from our agency for 2020. And as difficult as it was, there were some great things that did happen, including the 2 groundbreakings. We did one in Clovis and one in Kingsburg. HUD recognized Fresno Housing as the 2020 Public Housing Program of the Year. And then March kind of happened and our agency quickly mobilized and started working remotely, started doing for the first time some virtual inspections, and did our first pandemic move-in for 100 families in the Parlier Migrant Center last April. Just finished that up again this year. Let's see. I mentioned our empowerment team. I'm not going to get into all of these bullet points on this slide. It's kind of overwhelming, but our empowerment team, again, just did some amazing work throughout the year with food distributions to some of our most in need residents. We revamped an educational scholarship program that we do, looking through a diversity, equity, and inclusion lens. And we changed a lot of the former restrictions and had one of our highest interest lists ever this last year. Again, some of these things will continue well into the future. Our youth, they held their annual tech camp in partnership with CMAC and GeekWise Academy again. It was an amazing event. Our HCV families that I talked about a little bit earlier enjoyed a back to school event in August. It was kind of a drive-through done in our driveway at our central office in downtown Fresno, and worked on some digital divide opportunities with some partners, and closed the year out in December, basically repairing 4 of those deteriorated motels as part of the Home Key program that H had just spoken about, and that Jessica had asked the question about. I'm not going to go into a whole lot of details about our special initiatives and efforts, but I do want to just quickly mention the California Avenue neighborhood efforts that are led by Tiffany Mangum in our office, along with the residents of Southwest Fresno. Fresno Housing had applied for and was awarded some HUD funding for a comprehensive neighborhood transformation planning effort. And so it's going to be an amazing opportunity moving forward. And I just encourage anybody that's interested to follow at West Fresno Can to stay up to date on that work. Sophia's already mentioned the drive work, just that Fresno Housing has continued to co-sponsor, along with Leadership Council for Justice and Accountability, the Permanent Affordable Housing Initiative part of Drive. And that work continues very much so. Just to touch base real quick, I don't think it ever can be said enough how important it is to be inclusive in a lot of this work and affordable housing. And so I'm going to kind of, again, oversimplify, but pre-pandemic, our agency had taken a really strong look and had embraced a journey on DEI work within our own agency. We'd had a series of town hall workshops. Some of you may remember the author of Evicted, Matthew Desmond, coming to town. We hosted him and his eviction stuff at the library in downtown Fresno. So just some really hard work going on in our agency because it is long overdue. And just wanted to note that that's something strategically that we've been working on as an agency as well. The HPLA went through it with some great folks like Miguel and Upholdings and some other folks in our community, really focused on policy outcomes, potential policy outcomes for improving some of the challenges that Sophia and team have outlined throughout this presentation on building and developing affordable housing in a community that has way more need than it does resources. And I'm just going to kind of skip over our resident safety surveying, but know that Fresno Housing has been doing a lot of work reaching out to and listening to our 50,000 residents on safety issues. And that's actually something that's being presented at our board meeting tonight, where thousands of our own residents have provided some amazing input. HCV and landlord efforts, like such a big deal in Fresno. We, as I'd mentioned, had started the virtual inspections in like April of 2020 with over 6,600 getting completed before the end of 2020. And we've had some pretty positive feedback on that process. Clearly, there's room for improvement. We created a new resident portal for our residents, our customers, who can now do things electronically instead of having to come into an office. And so it's just, there's been a lot of good improvements made during what was a really tough year. About 75 landlords have gone through some technical assistance and some education sessions in 2020. And just to give you some context, there's around 3,000 landlords enrolled on our HCV program. And there is always, I can't emphasize this enough, a need for responsible landlords that are interested in renting out safe units that are affordable in our community. So I would just say that if you know of anybody that might be interested, please have them reach out to us. We'd be glad to talk more about that. And next year, we hope to bring you some interesting information in this report on a pilot program that we're doing that helps incentivize new landlords to working in our HCV program. So I'm just going to shift over and wrap up with some photos of developments. I'm going to first look backwards, and then I'm going to take you through some renderings of future developments that we have underway. And I'd just like you to keep one thing in mind is that something that Michael Duarte, our Chief Real Estate Officer, is always reminding me of is 2.5 years, he says, is fast to develop just one affordable housing property. So I will start with the Home Key program. I won't get into too much detail because others have covered this already, but this transformation started at the end of 2020, and it was the 4 properties we purchased, Fresno Housing purchased along Parkway Drive in the Jane Addams neighborhood. In less than 30 days, our team was able to repair 4 properties and get, like today, we have an average of about 450 individuals that were at extremely high risk that now are housed. And as H had mentioned, this was very much so done in collaboration with Mayor Dyer's Project Off-Ramp and just a fantastic team of agencies and outreach workers that helped find homes for so many people. The future of these 4 properties for Fresno Housing allows for renovations into permanent affordable housing opportunities instead of this transitionary type of housing. And so we envision a process down the road that's going to incorporate the community-based organizations and the Jane Addams neighborhood and all of our other partners to create a vibrant connection into the neighborhood for these 4 properties and hopefully some more. Also completed in 2020 was renovations at Mariposa Commons. This was 40 units of farm labor housing. The next few slides are just prior to 2020, but they talk about some of those elements where design is so important in a neighborhood. Some of you are going to remember this eyesore that was in downtown Fresno for so long, being held up by the stilts. Well, now City View is a mixed use development with commercial on the ground floor and housing up above. Many of you may remember some work that so many did, residents, volunteers in the El Dorado Park neighborhood by Fresno State wanted some improvements, and now the San Ramon apartments reflect all that input from residents. The one most notable feature here are the outward facing windows. The residents had just said, you know, we want eyes on the street. And that's such an easy design element to incorporate once you start engaging authentically with residents and understand what their needs are. Phoenix at Calaveras, I'm just going to run through a couple of slides where we did some renovations in more of a small setting neighborhood. So you can see that this is some big improvements made. 451 at South Tower. It's just important to note that how much our goal is to fit into the neighborhood. I'm not pictured here, but one other example is Legacy Commons, one of our bigger properties in Fresno. It has a music room that's available to members of the community, not just the Fresno housing residents. So it's not just about aesthetically fitting into a neighborhood, but our services as well. So last, I'm just going to wrap up by showing you a few renderings of our upcoming or underway developments. 5 of the 7 properties listed here are in Fresno. This is a rendering of Alegre Commons, which just started construction at the end of December. This was previously a vacant lot over by Blackstone and Barstow, and it's now going to have 42 new units. Linnea Villas is out in Kingsburg. It's a senior community, and we'll be having a grand opening soon out in Kingsburg for these 47 new units that are going to be standing in place where there was also a vacant lot. In Clovis, there will be another grand opening soon, and that will be for Solavita Commons. One more vacant lot that is now going to house 60 new units. And then if you'll notice in the orange box, anybody familiar with the Blackstone and Shields area, this may look familiar. This will hopefully one day be the Arthur at Blackstone. This is one of our properties that's in the pre-development stage, so we're still pending some funding. But you can see there's some plans to renovate, have an urban feel, commercial on the bottom, and then there would be some new towers that you can see in the back that would accommodate 41 units at this site. This was a very exciting development, and it represented our agency's first groundbreaking that was done all virtual in Chinatown in 2020. So 57 new units are currently under construction. Again, this property used to be a vacant lot. And the Monarch at Chinatown was part of what Sophia's mentioned before, the TCC work, the Transformative Climate Communities work. Down again in the orange box, some may be familiar with the former Econo Inn, and that is underway right now, construction underway, renovating this property that will be 26 new units, or not new, but 26 renovated units. And the last property that we have underway is the Villages at Paragon. And again, you can see the before and the rendering of after for 28 units. So with that, I'm going to wrap up, say thank you, encourage you to stay current on our work by considering following us on the social media stuff at Fresno Housing or visiting our What's Happening page on our website. So with that, I will say thank you. And if I do jump off, it's only because I'm getting my next board meeting.
Thank you, Kelly. We did have one question for you. Can we get you to answer one question before you jump off?
Maybe.
All right. What is it, Summer?
Thank you, Kelly. Kelly, Brandy News via Vegas asked, when the Project Home Key residents become permanent housing, will the residents be connected the way the residents in your other housing projects, such as the connections and feedback survey, participation in your board, etc.? So it sounds like, will they be as connected as your other residents in other properties?
Certainly. So we treat all of our residents equally and equitably. So I guess that is kind of a little bit of a contradiction. So I apologize for that, but we would envision that. And it's not to say, Brandy, that some of the folks that are in those properties today won't transition out into another housing opportunity long before we go through that transition period. And as I mentioned, it may take some time, quite some time, to build those facilities out into the more permanent affordable housing stuff. So it's nothing that's happening this year or this week. And so I would just like to say that if there are residents, we will certainly be doing that kind of outreach and engagement with them.
Awesome. Thank you, Kelly.
Yes, thank you.
All right. It looks like Alex is requesting that that Kelly, you contact him. So Alex, we will pass along your information to Kelly. And Brandy agrees. She believes that the collaborative nature of what we're doing is lovely. So thank you very much, Brandy, for that. Back to Sophia.
Okay, thank you, Summer. So I just have a couple more slides and then we can get into the questions and comments. So we're almost there. My last piece here that is, I'm sure of interest is next steps. Why are we here talking about this annual progress report? Well, because we want you to know about it. We want you to take a look at it. And we'd love to have your comments on it, both tonight, of course, is fine, or you can contact us anytime until May 6th, either by email or phone call. As you see here on the slide, you can obtain a copy of our annual report on our website. Again, it's there on the top of the slide. And then we are presenting our annual progress report to the City Council on May 13th. We ask for your comments by May 6th because that gives us a little bit more time to package them up and send them to the council. However, comments made up until May 12th will actually be accepted. So that is our next steps. Of course, happy to answer any more questions on those. And that brings us to our comments and questions.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sophia. I do have a few questions in our Q&A. So I'll start off with Esteban Pauly. Esteban asks, how does low income housing demand compare to available or projected supply?
Well, it is much more than our supply at the moment. Our numbers are showing at least a demand for at least 20,000 affordable housing units, and you can tell by our production numbers that we are not that number, we're not even close. So the city is preparing and ramping up its resources. It's always in search of more resources to support affordable housing. A couple I'd like to mention are the LEAP grant that we have is going to be looking at setting up an affordable housing trust fund, which would be a new source of funding that would be dedicated to affordable housing. So that's one tool. Also, the city just secured a new source of funding, the permanent local housing allocation funds, which are about $3 million a year. But we know that those two alone aren't going to make it. So we are continuing our search for resources, new partnerships, trying to conserve our existing housing stock. I mean, all of those objectives in the housing element, I think, are more relevant than ever in trying to help us meet the demand.
Thank you, Sophia. The next question comes from Carla Martinez, and perhaps it's a good question for Karen Jenks, who is on the call from our housing division. In regards to program 10A, will there be any pursuit of funding for a mobile home park assessment study? Karen, are you able to speak to that at all?
Yes, I'm trying to start my video. There we go. We don't have any current plans for mobile home park assessment study, but under the PLHA grant that Sophia mentioned, we do have some funds set aside for owner rehab of mobile homes. So that is one area in which we're touching that. But as far as an assessment, I'm not aware of one.
Wonderful. Thanks, Karen. And another question from Brandy here. Councilmember Arias has stated that there is an 18,000 unit shortage in affordable housing. Rental housing has gone up 10% in the past year. It seems like the number of housing for those who are extremely low housing is very low. What are the plans to bridge that gap more significantly?
And I think I would say, my previous response is a response to that. And also the mayor is describing his housing strategy. It's on the council agenda tomorrow. So you might want to tune into that. One of the components of that is building more smaller housing units. Accessory dwelling units is what we call them, or second units. And that's just a piece of the strategy. We're talking 400 to 800 units. But I recommend checking out the mayor's strategy on the April 28th council meeting tomorrow.
Thank you. And just briefly to clarify Brandy's earlier comment, she wanted to clarify that the collaboration she was referring to was that between the residents and the the Fresno Housing Authority, I believe. She says listening to the people affected is very important.
Thank you for that.
All right. As far as typed questions, I don't have any in the queue. If there are any attendees who would like to provide a verbal comment, feel free to raise your hand. If you are joining us via phone, feel free to dial *9 and it'll also put you in the queue. I see none, Sophia. I think we're good.
Okay, well, I'd like to thank everyone for attending this workshop tonight. I hope you're able to access any further resources that you would like, and we look forward to receiving any further comments that you would have for us. Thank you very much.